Oh boy, what a show this was. I'm John Renton with the Retro Review of World Class Championship Wrestling Parade of Champions 2 for May 5th, 1985. And I can tell you how I felt about at least 80% of this goddamn show. Make it stop with all these gimmicks on top of gimmicks on top of gimmicks. It was a good way to present a wrestling show when World Class was still drawing pretty good goddamn crowds, at least they would for about the next year. My god, this show was such a serious downgrade from Parade of Champions 1, but I do want to thank Classic Wrestling Stuff on YouTube as well as For Wrestling Fans on other channels, but specifically Classic Wrestling Stuff on YouTube for uploading shows like this that may not make it to Peacock. And there were some matches cut, but you know what? If these matches are a representation of how the show went, I'm glad they cut some of this. It was about a 100-minute long clip, and there was like one good match. Kevin Vaughn Eric and Ric Flair, and the rest of it was just either bad wrestling that went way too long or miscues, and then there was an overly gimmicked like 12-man tag match and just sweet 12-man tag. I'm not fucking kidding. They really overdid it on all the fucking gimmicks because they had two rings because they were going to have multi-man matches and everything, and just fucking goddamn Christ. The two-ring concept is not the worst thing in the world, but Jesus, this show was bad. Anyway, that musical opening, if you know, you goddamn know. And then they're in Texas Stadium, 26,100 some odd people. It was down from the 43,500 people that they had for the David Vaughn Eric Memorial the year prior. Mark Lawrence did the announcing for this. Bill Mercer was either on break or just said, no, I'm not going to call this. I think he had some other kind of job too. I mean, because I know that he did the announcing for World Class, but I believe he did some kind of news reporting as well. Or maybe he just needed a break and they decided, hey, we're going to have Mark Lawrence do this. And Mark Lawrence, bless him, should not have been doing wrestling commentary. He was fine doing the ring announcing, but anyway, that was the least of the problems for this show. So, Fritz and Doris Vaughn Eric, were brought in, got a big reaction. The family was there. They presented yellow roses to Doris. David Vaughn Eric, the Yellow Rose of Texas. And okay, that was a sweet moment. That was pretty goddamn cool. And then Mark talks about all matches are sanctioned by the National Wrestling Alliance. They would pull out of the NWA by either the next Parade of Champions or just shortly after because they wanted to crown Vaughn Eric as a world champion. They couldn't get the NWA title back, and there were a bunch of other reasons. Like the fact that World Class would basically be, going under a couple years afterwards, even though they didn't know that. So, matches that were cut. Johnny Mantel versus Skip Young that went to a draw, so it was probably smart to cut that. Scott Casey and Brian Adias versus Kelly and Nick Kanitsky. Man, Nick Kanitsky, that's a really hard thing to say. And then Terry Gordy versus Kamala. They were all cut, though Terry Gordy and Kamala did make appearances later. So, the first match was Mike Vaughn Eric versus Rip Oliver with Jim Cornett. Jim Cornett was all over this goddamn show. He has talked about this show on his podcast, so I'm not gonna, dive into a whole bunch of that stuff. I'm just gonna give my reactions as a fan, but I will tell you this. Everything he said about what he witnessed at the show was absolutely correct. It's like, good fucking God. Hearing what somebody thought that was actually at the goddamn show, there's something to be said for that. And Mike Vaughn Eric versus Rip Oliver. Bless Mike Vaughn Eric. He should have never been in the goddamn ring. The best part of this was hearing Cornette basically just shout at Mike Vaughn Eric and put over his guy. Anyway, Mike had a cast on his hand because he actually had it broken. And he was recovering from it, and they were doing the cast angle. So as the big baby face, he clocks the heel and wins with the cast. This match went twice as long as it should have. Was what it was. Gino Hernandez and Chris Adams versus the Great Kabuki. Is it you, Kabuki? And Scott Casey got cut. They had a lot of people work twice. Because they didn't have a lot of full-time guys in the territory. So it made sense. But it really did show that a lot of these guys, they better have gotten really good payoffs, is all I'm going to say. Well, I mean, I'm sure Gino and Chris and maybe One Man Gang to an extent, and the Vaughn Erics all got paid pretty goddamn well. Don't know about everybody else. So anyway, the Fantastics, Fulton and Rogers, took on the Midnight Express, which was Eaton and Condrey at the time, and of course Jim Cornette was there, and he was handcuffed to Little John, aka, Silo Sam, 7'6", 300 or 400 some odd pounds. Really looked confused all the goddamn time. Looked impressive as far as that. Like, holy shit, you don't see too many guys like that. But that was really about it. And it was a no DQ, no time limit, anything goes tag match with two referees for the vacant American Tag Team Championships. And man, you look at these two teams and you just know the shit they could do. I mean, Lane and Eaton, I would argue, had better matches with the Fantastics later on, even though Condrey and Eaton had really good matches with them. But no, this wasn't good because it was messy. You had respective partners in each ring, and the guys would pair off, and there would be a referee in each ring. And this is something Cornette talked about, that they were supposed to do a double pin thing, but the Fantastics were supposed to come up with it first. And I'll get to that here in a bit. But it was bad. Little John misses his cue to clock Eaton. And all this is going on, the guys are working hard. There's outside action. There's, they're slamming each other on the floors. They're really trying to work this stuff, even though they're, paired off in separate rings. Whenever they get the double teaming stuff on, there's some good stuff here because all these guys are premier workers. And you got Cornette, who worked so well with the Midnight Express, but Little John just looked so confused. He was just there like a goddamn fence post, and he just couldn't do anything. Size, that was it. He was just impressively tall, but he had no physique or anything. He was just a big old country boy. Well, there's nothing wrong with that, but when you're trying to do a national wrestling promotion, even though they wouldn't leave fucking Texas except for the occasional show, and that kind of was part of the reason that WCCW died, because Fritz Vaughn Eric was a little bit too territorial. But anyway, he misses his cue, and they were supposed to have one referee where Dennis Condrey is going to pin somebody, and then I believe Rogers is going to pin Eaton. Well, because Little John misses cue, Dennis clearly pinned Bobby Fulton. And I'm talking a full, 15 to 20 seconds before. Maybe even 30. And then Rogers is rolling him up. Rolls up Eaton 1, 2, 3. And said that was supposed to be the result. They do this big old schmoz and everything. What the hell's going on with the referees, all this stuff. And then they hand the tag titles to the Fantastics. And the fans are booing this because they just saw the Midnight, and even though they love the Fantastic, I mean, they cheered it, but they were booing all this stuff, what the hell? We just saw the heels get the victory. We're happy the baby faces won, but a lot of fans are like, what the fuck? We know what we just saw. It was so badly timed. It was a big mistake. A really, really big mistake. 7'6" size mistake. And then Cornette had a pre-gimmick tennis racket that he was going to hit Lil Jon with, and then Lil Jon was going to break it. Big spot with the Giant. And then the racket just, it's like it was made of rice paper. It's absolutely ridiculous. Whew! Unfortunately, that is not the worst that we had. 12-man tag team match. Best 3 out of 5 falls. Not 2 out of 3. 3 out of 5. I don't know why they just didn't go 6 out of 9 falls. Nice. Or wait, let's see. Could have been 4 out of 7. 5 out of 8, 6 out, yeah, 6 out, no, 6 out of 9 actually. Anyway, so 60-minute time limit, and it felt like it went about 2 hours. Now, I think it only went maybe 20, 30 minutes, but still, this match went on forever. Here, in 2 rings, and it was like 2 separate 3-man tag matches, because since it was hard to put 12 people around the ring, sometimes it'd be cluttered around the ring and all in one ring, and then other times they'd separate off. $100,000 cash prize, and you win a Lincoln Continental. Whoever gets the deciding fall wins a Lincoln Continental. And I knew that this was a show where something special happened with Gino and Chris, which was the only reason that I sat through this absolute dog shit match. And that's nothing against a lot of the talent. The talent was the Vaughn Erics, Kerry, Kevin, and Mike, and the Freebirds. That blood feud that happened in 82, 83, well, and 82, so 83, 84. And then the Freebirds eventually came back. They were making shots and everything, but they eventually did come back. They were teaming with the Vaughn Erics. That blood feud, out the goddamn window. It's not that rivals haven't teamed up before, but that was still, it wasn't like 5 years later. It was only a year. Barely. But anyway, they took on Chris Adams, Gino Hernandez, Rip Oliver, One Man Gang, Kamala, and Dr. Death, Steve Williams, with Skandar Akbar, Gary Hart, and Jim Cornette. Because you had Akbar that had his guys, you had Gary Hart that had One Man Gang, you had Jim Cornette that was managing Rip Oliver, Crippler Rip Oliver, which is really hard to say. This was overly gimmicked, ridiculous, and despite the talent, this was one of the worst matches I've seen of the 80s. Especially with all that star power. Now, the crowd did pop quite a bit. But this was overly done, overly ridiculous. I don't know why they thought this would work. It barely worked. And I'm glad they just didn't do one fall, but you could have done 2 out of 3. I mean, I'm sorry, you didn't need to do 3 out of 5, even with all this talent. So, Gino ended up pinning Kerry after Chris Adams hit a super kick. Remember when the super kick actually meant something and people weren't just throwing super kick parties? Even when Shawn Michaels did it, the super kick meant something. God damn it. Super kick, DDT, so many goddamn moves are just overused now, and just, God, you kids get off my lawn. Anyway, I could barely follow this. Like, I was watching this, and I was like, okay, let me watch this as this, see where the falls happen. Double clothesline pins Hayes. I believe Gino and Chris hit that, and that was the second fall. So the heels are up 2 falls to 0. Obviously, the baby faces are going to win. Crossbody on Oliver for 3. And that was the third fall, so there we go. And then Kerry got taken out by One Man Gang and Kamala. They just piled on him and everything. The question was, oh my God, could he continue? And then he did. He got beat up for a bit, got a hot tag. Triple Vaughn Eric drop kick on Oliver, I believe, in one ring, but a rope break. And then a variation of the heart attack, barely. Gino Hernandez just kind of fell down because it wasn't, I think all the guys were tired because that stadium had to have been hot. Because there was that hole in the roof, so God could watch his team play. And they just, they did that. I mean, everybody had to have been tired because, I mean, Gordy had already wrestled. Gino and Chris had already wrestled. Mike had already wrestled. I mean, even if Mike hadn't wrestled, to be fair, Mike should have never been in the ring. And, I mean, I got nothing against Mike as a person. It's terrible that all the Vaughn Erics passed away as young as they did. It's terrible they passed away at all. I mean, it's too bad none of them, or only one of them is still living. One of them of the original brothers. And actually, I always forget that Jackie was, the first Vaughn Eric brother to pass away that Kevin had. But anyway, Mike just should have never been in the ring. And yeah, so then we get the fourth fall. So it's tied up 2-2. It's madness in the fifth fall. Everywhere. Kevin does actually a pretty impressive. He runs, and he's barefoot, so he doesn't spring off the ropes. He jumps over the goddamn ropes. Hits Dr. Death with the crossbody, almost hit him in the groin head first, and gets the top 1, 2, 3. And we get a brawl afterwards because One Man Gang, who Gary Hart, for whatever reason, called Moon the One Man Gang. I don't understand why that is. But Gary Hart, one of my favorite managers of all time. I've gained more of an appreciation as I've watched these older shows. If I could afford his book, I'm not going to pay for an out-of-print edition like that. If a distributor or publisher, rather, ever does a reprint and makes it more affordable, I will absolutely buy Gary Hart's autobiography. But anyway, we're all on the floor because One Man Gang was going to use his chain to bash the Lincoln Continental windshield. And then, I believe David Manning was the referee, and he's just there. He's got the chain. He chases One Man Gang away. And then Gino and Chris are kind of like this, and they go to leave. And then Gino, and it's great. This is the one good part of this goddamn fiasco, and it was a fucking fiasco. Gino runs back, grabs the chain, and the way David Manning does, like, oh no, he does the spinny thing and all that, man. And then then Gino grabs it, hits, I think it was Guy Laney, I think it was the name of the sign up there, from Denton, Texas. I don't know anything about the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, that is. Is Denton in that area? I would imagine it is. But anyways, like a $20,000 to $30,000 Lincoln Continental, so it was one of the lower end ones because Lincoln Continentals are very expensive. And they bash the window open. Chris Adams takes his wrestling boots. He kicks the windshield in. Thank God he was wearing boots. Thank God it wasn't Kevin that decided to go heel and do that, because bare feet on glass wouldn't have necessarily worked. Just ask Bruce Willis and Die Hard. But anyway, that was the only good part of this. And then the Vaughn Erics are all distraught. Oh no, they're all distraught because of all this. I think Mike was distraught, or he's just confused. Hard to tell. I think it was before Mike ended up having the injury, the shoulder injury, where his brain just got fried in the surgery room. Really, really sad. Anyway, Ric Flair versus Kevin Vaughn Eric, NWA World Title match. They had a 20 count, so they had to utilize that 20 count instead of a 10 count outside the ring. It was at least good-ish. Actually, it was pretty good. Lone good match on the show. It went a while, but it started slow at first. Flair doing his usual stuff. Kevin throwing those hard kicks, those hard knees, those chops. He got fiery. Kevin got some close near falls. Very good teases of the claw that Rick kept fighting off. Got some rest holds that they made work, like sleeper hold spot. And then more heavy chops. We get claw, but in the ropes. They tumble outside. It ends up being a double count out. And Kevin's like, well, no, I'm going to slap the claw on him anyway. Send the fans home happy. And the fans are all cheering and everything, going wild, and the family has to come out and basically stop Kevin. And the reason I didn't go too long about that match is there isn't really anything to complain about. It was good. It was good. And okay, maybe they should have gone with an idea to fight between the rings and everything, so they would have been outside the ring and it would have been more exciting. I wonder who came up with that idea. It wasn't me, I'll tell you that much, but it would have been a lot more exciting than what they did. Not that what they did was bad, but it was what it was. And then we get Vaughn Eric with Fritz versus One Man Gang with Gary Hart. This is Gary Hart's hair, what's left of it, versus One Man Gang getting a match with Fritz if Gang beats Kerry. Okay, and Fritz had been retired. Well, he unretired for the David Vaughn Eric Memorial Show, but he had retired after that, which made sense because he was old. And it wasn't great, but at least the crowd loved it. And Kerry, this is when I don't know how many faculties he had about him, but he had enough where he was able to, have a pretty good match with One Man Gang. One Man Gang, great goddamn heel, really good monster heel. Fritz was handcuffed to Gary, by the way, and basically they were trash talking each other, and he roughs up Gary, and then Fritz ends up pulling One Man Gang's foot, and Kerry tops him 1, 2, 3, and then the Vaughn Erics cuff Gang to the ropes, the ropes in the corner and everything, so he's like this, the one man cross gang, and then they shaved Gary Hart's hair, which it was like my hair, except all the hair here was just around the back. It was hilarious. It was absolutely hilarious. Hair-hilarious, if you will. And then One Man Gang gets the rope off, like, oh no, he broke the rope. He's done. He's angry. And then that ends the show. I don't usually do this because I know the Vaughn Erics, suffered a lot. But this show, when the show's bad, I don't care how old it is. This is a bad show. Really bad show. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Ritlin. I'll see you soon.